So international pickleball is taking off, and here's everything that you need to know about how pickleball is growing outside of the US. Everything from how they're similar to the US and some of the differences, as well as some of my predictions for the sport. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jack Monroe. I'm currently ranked #1 on the APP Tour, and I'm lucky enough for the past 3 years to have traveled internationally to Telford, UK for the English Open. And over those past 3 years, I've been able to see a lot, not only about how different the talent plays, but also about how the sport's growing. And here are a few of the things that I've noticed. First of all, something that I think you're going to find super interesting is international player mechanic and strategy versus players in the US. Now at the English Open, it's a great tournament, but it's hosted in a convention center, meaning that there's going to be roll-on courts as well as temporary nets. And this is the typical court setup for not only the UK, but most of Europe. While there are a bunch of outdoor courts, indoor courts are a little bit more prominent compared to the States. And so because of that, a lot of the players over there train with roll-on courts every single day, as well as the temporary nets. And so because of this, it naturally shows in their mechanics and strategy. So what's the difference? When you're playing inside of a convention center, you have to use these roll-on courts such as Pickleball or anything else, and what that does is that mutes the bounce about an inch or two, so the height of the bounce is going to be a lot less. And so because of this, slice is naturally going to be a lot more prominent because the ball won't bounce as much, so when you slice the ball, it's going to skid more off the ground and hit you near your ankle level rather than bouncing up and hitting you at your knee level. So while you can turn a heavy slice into heavy topspin, slice turns out to be very, very effective during these muted roll-on courts because the ball won't bounce as high, so it's very tough to get under it. And the other half of the court side of things is going to be the temporary nets. Well, yes, pickleball is still expanding and growing over there, and I'm sure that when we come back next year, they're going to have real nets. But right now, when you play on temp nets, it's a completely different game. And so the biggest difference between real nets and temp nets, assuming they're the same height, is going to be how the ball reacts when it hits the top of the net. With a real net, when the ball clips the tape, it typically either sails long, or because the net is reinforced, it'll hit the net and just completely die. However, with a temporary net, you have an extra ½ inch or even an inch to play with, because when the ball hits that tape, the tape is so loose that the tape will actually just get pushed over by the ball and the ball will still come over. This is why with temp nets, when a ball hits the net cord, it typically goes over and stays in play compared to the real nets where it just kills the point. And so because that top inch of the net can be pushed over by the ball, you're going to see a lot more players hit flatter shots because they have that extra inch to play with. This is why a lot more players during the tournament that played internationally were slapping their forehands and backhands rather than brushing it like what the US players were used to. Because using real nets, if a ball clips the tape, it typically just kills the point by either going long or back into the net. But here, the players have learned how to use the net in a good way to their advantage. I often saw a lot more net cords on drives because these players are just slapping through the net rather than trying to get it over, relying on that extra margin where if a ball clips the tape, it actually goes over. And so I saw this specifically in singles, where a lot of the US players were trying to brush and use heavy topspin, and a lot of the international players were focused on slapping through it. And obviously some of this does translate to doubles when they hit that third shot drive. Another thing that I noticed was the different play styles between each country. If a country plays more indoors, you'll see more slaps or more slices. If a country plays more paddle, then you're gonna see more lobs and finesse. And if a country is heavy in badminton or table tennis, you're gonna see that in their strokes. So it's really cool seeing a complete variety of sports backgrounds that these players have rather than the typical tennis pipeline that we see in the US. Now there was a small difference in format compared to what we're used to in the States as well. At the English Open, the past 3 years, it has been pool play where you play your entire pool of around 4 or 5 teams, and then that feeds you into seeding. Top 1 or 2 teams from each pool make it out of their pool to then play a single elimination bracket format that typically starts in the round of 16. And so in the US, we're not used to the pool play that feeds into the bracket, we're just used to the bracket format. So there are times in every event where you don't know whether you're gonna make it out of your pool or not, or you don't know if it's based off of point differential or game win percentage or head-to-head or whatever it is. So there's a lot of different things that you have to look into with pool play compared to just if you won your match on the bracket. Now let's talk about the organizations internationally. In terms of the organization, Pickleball England has done a great job running this tournament for the past 3 years. I know there's always been hiccups here and there, but this goes to show that pickleball in Europe is where pickleball in the US was around 4 or 5 years ago. So in my eyes, and yes, you guys can disagree, pickleball in Europe right now is where pickleball in the US was in 2020. And this isn't a bad thing whatsoever. It's just crazy seeing that pickleball is the Wild West in the US now, and it's even more of the Wild West in Europe. Since there isn't a pro tour in Europe, you see a lot of these players either sign with PPA in the US and move to the US, or go MLP Australia, or just play the international tournaments that the APP is trying very hard to partner with. But yes, for the organization and how the tournaments run, you can just tell that they're a few years behind compared to the US, which isn't a bad thing whatsoever. It's just that adoption hasn't been as recent or rapid, and the biggest thing being the bandwidth with sponsors and just overall commitment to the sport. Now, a few places internationally where I do see pickleball taking off with much less friction are Vietnam, just Asia in general. You see some tournaments in Japan pop up as well. And so Asia has honestly grown quite fond of pickleball, and it's like their new emerging sport. From everything that I've seen on stream or YouTube over there to anecdotes from other people who have traveled there, they are truly obsessed with growing the game. And what's so cool is with a lot of Asia coming from table tennis, you can see that in their style. A good friend of mine, Len Yang, actually won the China Open, and he was telling me about how fast their hands were because they typically are used to table tennis, but none of them could hit overheads. A lot of them struggled with serves, but even the 3-5s or 4-0s had very fast hands because they're used to opening with table tennis. My prediction is that Asia is going to produce a lot of the top pickleball talent in the next 3 to 5 years. And so this is a big prediction I have. Make sure to comment down below whether you agree or disagree. And quite honestly, they're just going to be a leader in the pickleball space. The players, the fans, the backing are all obsessed with the sport, and you can see it with everything that they're putting out and promoting. If players in Asia get good courts and start training it seriously, then they're going to come and take a lot of US players' lunch money. India is also starting to grow a big presence in pickleball too. Not only with PWR, but with Global Sport and WPBL, they've attracted a lot of top talent to come overseas and play in their tournaments for the past year or two. With some of the tours having really legit backing in India, as well as a year or two of proof, they've been able to convince and sign a lot of the top players in the US to come over and compete overseas for good money. And in my eyes, international exposure is a great way to grow my brand, and it's something I'm looking to do a lot more frequent going into 2026. But overall, I hope this video taught you a lot about international pickleball and how it's going and where it's headed. So while I tried my best to give you some info, I also threw in some of my opinions. So make sure to comment down below whether you agree or disagree, and let's discuss some more. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see y'all next week.